Thank you all for coming to Gainesville, and this is 2 JIs in a row with really good weather, so that's awesome so far. It's good to see a lot of friends here. So I work at Mobiquity, and I manage our software development teams on their day-to-day, how they're building their applications, how they're thinking about security and performance and accessibility, and then also coordinating with the other teams like architecture and design and DevOps, kind of the full life cycle of a project. And in software development, you have this term, there's tons of buzzwords and jargon, but one that's used very common is the happy path. So you're designing something for an optimal scenario. Here's the way that it's going to work if somebody acts in a rational way, they do the right things, they have the right access controls. But what happens if they do weird behavior? What happens if you tap the logo 5 times and your app crashes? These sorts of odd edge cases. So that's kind of comes to accessibility and trying to think about what happens when somebody is not accessing your design, your news interface, your app with the sorts of inputs that you would expect, or they don't have the way to receive the outputs the way that you would expect. All right. I'm going to talk about the types of impairments, so not really solutions here. This is more of stating the problem and why we should care. So why do we care about things like story? Or why do we care about things in software like performance and security? Because there's 2 reasons. Either it's an ethical concern or it's a legal concern. So I'm going to hopefully make the ethical case here, but pretty soon it's going to be a legal concern as well. Just as we had in public buildings and public spaces with the Americans for Disability Act, where we had to do wheelchair ramps and other sorts of accessibility, ingress and egress, the same thing is happening in digital interfaces. If we build an app for the government or for some governmental organization, or a nonprofit that receives money from the government, then we have to do accessibility checking. It's a legal requirement. Just a quick straw poll. How many people here are familiar with the 508 compliance checklist? Anyone? Couple hands. So the 508 is a government standard that says this is how you should be designing digital interfaces or any sort of digital document. It covers things like font sizes and colors and different sorts of markup we do behind the scenes to make sure that it's available on different devices. And that's, I'll give you some tools toward the end that you can look at. But this will be pretty brief, and if anybody wants to talk more about this afterward, I'm happy to do it. All right, so the 4 main types of disabilities or impairments are mobility, that's kind of the most obvious or easy one to grasp. Also visual, so this could be color blindedness or true blindedness. There's some other stuff I'll go through here. Hearing and speaking. And this presentation kind of became a bit of a meta presentation without having speaker notes, right? So it's like, well, then some of the things, some of the jargon I wanted to use, I can't use. So it's like I'm afraid of mispronouncing certain sorts of green color blindness, so I'm not going to. I'm going to talk around it. And then also, I wanted to show a quick demo of a voice assist tool, but I don't have a computer to use, so I can't show that. So, little meta, I'll work around it. All right, I was in DC this past week helping judge for the Society for News Design, and I feel very fortunate to have been asked to do that a couple times now. Saw some really, really excellent stuff, but no, accessibility was never a topic of concern among us. About, is this good design? We talked about performance, we talked about mobile access, and this is all great stuff, but I didn't ever hear of, I wonder what this is like on a screen reader. I wondered what this chart looks like if somebody has green weak vision. All right, so I started to walk around on my extra day, and I was walking around the mall, and I walked up to the Capitol, and I was like, all right, I'm a sucker for construction metaphors, because building construction relates so much to software, it's approachable. So I was walking up, and I'm coming up to the Capitol building here, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go up and look around. And I was trying to pretend as if I was in a wheelchair. So I walked up to it, and I'm like, oh, I'm stuck. I cannot go up these stairs. I cannot get up here. Fortunately, there was a direct access. So this is the type of direct accessibility where I could come up it on my own. I could go around the side, and I could go up this wheelchair ramp. Clearly, it's a shim. It's an afterthought. It was put there because it was a legal requirement to be put there. All right. So I walk myself around, and there's trash cans. Right? Literally, this is a garbage experience. Right? These trash cans are blocked. You could get by it, you could kind of squeeze, but clearly this is an afterthought. We put it there because we had to, and it wasn't thinking about the experience for somebody who is in a wheelchair. Or crutches, or lots of different things. Somebody who is just hard to walk upstairs. If you come up kind of to the side, this is much nicer. So you're kind of up that upper pavilion area, and there's stairs, but there's also a way that I can get through the side. So this is direct access. There's a little sloped ramp over there. I don't know if this points, but the little sloped ramp up there, this was really nice. So I can get up here, and they clearly used thoughtful transitions there. It was pretty easy architecturally. I get up, I can see the Capitol building, I can look at all the construction that's going on. My primary experience is nicely accessible here. It's direct. I can, on my own power, come up here. I can turn around, I can look out, was that west, over the mall, and it's nice and pretty. If I walk around to the other side, to the east side of the Capitol building, no direct access here. Accessibility is a second-class concern. There's no way that I can get up these stairs, just not possible. So that part of the experience was out for me. All right, so types of visual, which is the most probably relevant to us right now in news design. Color blindedness, night blindedness, visual assistant, and then blindedness. So color blindedness is most common. It's about 8% in men, 1% in women. The most common type has to do with green hues and distinguishing between. Normally, most people can see 7. So if you're green blind, you can only see 2 or 3. There's also green weak, and since I don't have my notes, I won't try to speak out the deuteronomia. There I did. I looked like a fool. I like to look like a fool in public. But at the core, there's also red weak. When they all kind of get bundled together, if you're creating some sort of a chart or graphic, you have about 20 hues of color that can be distinguished instead of 100, if you're trying to design for 99% of people. Okay. Night blindedness means that when you have low screen brightness, that the contrast gets so minimized that people can't read anymore. We kind of see this a lot on our devices when we're outside in super bright sunlight. That's a kind of a way to simulate this. Visual assistants. Lots of people in here probably wear glasses, right, or contacts or something. For visual assistants, we have corrective lenses for nearsighted and farsighted, but a place this pops up is also astigmatism, where items get skewed. So if you're creating charts that have lines that are very close to each other, are using 3D to convey meaning, that's going to be hard for somebody with astigmatism to understand because it's skewed. For night blindness, real easy takeaway tip here for color blindness. There's some accessibility browsers that you can run your software through, and they will adjust the colors based on these accessible hues, and you can quickly see if I have these 2 slices of a bar chart or a pie chart next to each other, they're no longer visible. Just swap the colors. You can just move the colors around and make sure it's accessible. All right. Here's an example from one of the silver medal winners from the Washington Post. Awesome, awesome story. Really creative way to tell this. It's kind of an opinion piece about the presidency and atheism as told from a mother to a daughter during a commute. Really pretty, really well done. I ran this through some accessibility checkers, not very accessible. It's hard to make experimental formats accessible, and so I kind of picked on this one specifically because it was an experimental format. I used the tool, the Wave browser that WebAIM is a nonprofit in Utah that they create and they maintain, and you can add this into Chrome or Firefox. And you'll see some things like it doesn't know what is the heading tags that go along with these. Are these H1, H2, H3, these sorts of semantic HTML that we use to convey a hierarchy of content? These are missing. There's also a whole bunch of stuff down the sidebar related to alt tags not having content. So for an image, you're supposed to include an alternative text attribute that says, what is this? Not logo.ping. Right? That's not it. It's supposed to tell what the content is of this so that a screen reader could read it aloud. And then there's some other really, really cool stuff that I can't demo, shorter time period, but also I just don't have a computer. The Wave browser gives you this nice tool to pick out colors so that you can look at these grays, especially if you look at the bottom where this gray is coming across the face, super low contrast. At least you can kind of get around it by scrolling, and then the text is up in the white area and it's viewable. But this gray itself is very low contrast. It should be made darker. And there's tools that will show this. The Wave tool primarily is a way to go through the 508 accessibility checklist, and it will grade you, and it will give you AAAs or AAs on all these various characteristics. ARIA roles, if you're working on kind of more dynamic application stuff, make sure your team's familiar with ARIA roles. It's a way that you can make rich applications accessible. JAWS is the voice assist, what is it? Jobs accessible with speech. I think that's what it stands for. And it's kind of the major screen reader. Mac has one built in. You can use Command 5. So try this. Go to something that you really love, that you think is really well designed. Hit Command 5, and it will go into voice assist mode. And then try to go through it. Usually what will happen on most of these sorts of projects is the first 20 things that I have to read are links that are unrelated. Navigation links, ads, all sorts of stuff, and you can add in ARIA roles and have all that stuff skipped. Oh, I keep looking, thinking that's my one. All right, there we go. Let me go back. One. There we go. So Wave, ARIA, WebAIM, JAWS. All right, so then we also have hearing accessibility. Approximately 15% of adults have some sort of hearing impairment. Keep this in mind when you're doing your audio production. And 5% of adults have disabling hearing loss. And that does have an acronym, DHL. Disabling hearing loss means that you've lost at least 40 decibels of sensitivity. So that's 5% of people. That's a lot. You also have speaking impairments. 2% of adults have trouble using their voice in some way, cleft palates, other reasons. 1% stutter. And the stuttering thing is really kind of relevant to my day job right now, where I've been doing a lot of projects using the Amazon Echo as an interface. You have to speak very clearly, very cleanly. It's not very tolerant for stuttering. Regional dialects are difficult. It will get better because it will train, but it's made me slow down and try to think that to program this thing, I really have to be using the happy path of my voice. It's got to be just me. I can't be talking with somebody else and then talk to it. It's like very direct right now. So as we move into these sorts of kind of more dynamic, rich experiences that are crossing devices, we just need to be thinking about the people that we're designing for. They're not all perfect. Nobody here is perfect. There's all things that we have to deal with that make it hard for us to use or interact with information. So, everybody should have a good experience. And I think it's an ethical responsibility of us to make sure that our information is available to everyone.